this debate to the Chamber, to highlight the extreme plight of dogs around the UK who are subject to the cruel, callous, animal abuse of dog fighting. They have no voice of their own, and we must give them that voice. I am heartened that so many honourable colleagues wish to contribute to this debate today, to do just that, to give them their voice. And I'm proud that so many of my own constituents, just as so many constituents of other members, have contacted them to highlight the importance of this debate and its impact upon animal welfare and our legislative process. I will indeed.
I'm most grateful to her for giving way, and I'm delighted that she's chosen this topic for this particular debate. Is she aware that she has widespread support across the House, and that some of us have tabled a House of Commons motion on this matter, early day motion number 64, which calls for a national dogfighting strategy to stamp out this awful crime?
I thank the honourable member for your intervention. I'm delighted that I have so much support from all areas of the House, from all parties. And yes, I have signed the early day motion and very much fully support it. I will indeed.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for giving way. And just to pick up on the point made in the last intervention, I mean, of the many constituents who've contacted me, it's the frequency of occurrences of dogfighting across the country that's the real problem. And doesn't that show the urgent need for action, something along the lines that's been suggested?
I would very much agree with the honourable member's contribution. I think it's very valuable. I think there is a need for urgency, and I'm hopeful that we can progress in an urgent manner today.
On securing this. Isn't it worth putting on the record at the beginning of this the excellent work that charities do and rescue centres do, and the vast majority of dog owners, including myself, who's had rescue dogs, in the country, because we are a nation of dog lovers, and this is an extreme element, and we must deal with it.
I thank the honourable member. He makes his point extremely well, and I will come on to echo those very words. Although as we have had events across the UK in recent weeks, which may have divided some communities and indeed the direction of differing countries within the United Kingdom, what does bring us together are issues, I believe, of deep conviction on animal welfare, that we are dog lovers and want to see the eradication of such cruelty as dog fighting. I will indeed.
She's been most generous, and also I congratulate you on securing this important debate. I wonder if you agree with me this also needs to be in the wider context of sentencing for animal cruelty in this country. In the UK we have, I think, a very lax regime, which I think is based on the fact that we think of animals, frankly, just as chattels or property. And I think that attitude has to change. Whether the Honourable Lady agrees with that.
I would indeed, and I would thank the honourable member very much for his contribution. I echo his sentiments. Dogs are in fact man's best friend, not property, and I will be calling for tougher sentencing across the UK today.
Very grateful to the honourable lady and congratulate her on securing the debate. And no doubt she will comment on the fact that within the UK there is variability in the sentencing regime, and the fact that Northern Ireland has increased the sentencing capacity to between 2 and 5 years compared to 6 months in our own nation.
Indeed, I thank the honourable lady for that intervention. It's something that I think Northern Ireland should be extremely proud of, and I hope to see progress across the rest of the UK in that manner. I'd like to pay tribute to the many organisations who are involved in this field, including the League Against Cruel Sports, the RSPCA, SSPCA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, the Dogs Trust, Middlesex University, Battersea Cat and Dogs Home, and Mark the Vet, to name but a few. Without their vital work, we would have little awareness of the existence of this hidden, heinous crime. They also work tirelessly in the protection and rehabilitation of dogs and other animals. I thank them for this work, and also for recent reports bringing dog fighting to the mind of the public, including, crucially, our first national report on the state of dog fighting in the UK, Project Bloodline, launched last year by the League Against Cruel Sports. I'd like to also thank two of my constituents who are here today, Lisa Glasham and Paul Meakin. My constituents in attendance today know the importance of this issue, of this debate, and Lisa herself is never seen without her dog, although I understand she couldn't bring him in today. Peter Egan, Vice President of the League Against Cruel Sports, has said, "Dogfighting is a crime committed against our best friends by humanity's worst enemies. Criminals are making money from indescribable cruelty. Where are we as a society if we allow our dogs to be abused in this way?"
Very grateful for you giving way. I've had hundreds of emails from concerned constituents in Neath, and I'm sure you have support, in Wales for your motion today. But it's the absolute brutality that gets to me. They're using sort of cats as bait. They're training dogs to be absolute fighters, and it's so graphic. And I have a little staffy who's absolutely gorgeous and timid and everything, and the thought of him having his teeth ground down just to become, an object of brutality just breaks my heart. So you have my wholehearted support.
Many thanks to the Honourable Member. I think it has actually been quite a traumatic process putting together my speech for today's debate, and I'm sure constituency emails and your own experiences will have heralded the same feelings, which are disbelief and just complete concern for the animals who are abused in such a manner. Bill Oddie has highlighted that dogs are perhaps our most valued animal on earth. Humans look after them and they look after humans. They represent companionship, affection and loyalty. I can think of few evils so perverted, he said, and cruel as dog fighting. This is humanity at its worst. I will indeed.
Thank the lady for going away. Yesterday I had the privilege to meet a United States military veteran with his assistive dog. Does she agree with me that it defies belief that when dogs can be so positive and do so much good that people should treat them in this cruel way?
Yes, I very much agree with the Honourable Lady's comments. We have to remember that we have hearing dogs. We have dogs who work for the blind. We have dogs who help us in police force, in the fire brigade. We have dogs that help us in all aspects of our life. And that's why it is just quite so unbelievable that some people would treat dogs in such a way. I will.
May I point out that we have dogs that have saved the lives of our soldiers on many occasions in Northern Ireland, Iraq, Afghanistan, and will continue to do. God bless them. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for that intervention, and yes, I think it's extremely important we recognise the value of dogs in every aspect of our society and indeed in our armed forces. Yes, I will.
Today also marks the 100th anniversary. Thank you very much for giving way, and thank you, Sir Roger. Today also marks the 100th anniversary of the Somme. Given the role that military dogs also played in that role, I think today is a very apt and appropriate to be doing everything we can to defend them and the role they marked then, as well as that they continue to do going forward.
I would thank the Honourable Lady for that intervention and for paying tribute to those dogs who have worked for this country in such an admirable way. So what are the facts as we know them? Research, including that from the influential Project Bloodline, indicates that a dog fight occurs in the UK somewhere every day. Dogs involved in fighting are pitted against each other with the aim of inflicting as much pain and damage as possible. For dogs who fall into the hands of dog fighters, life is full of pain, suffering and violence. Dogs are left with horrific injuries, and rather than taking them to a vet and risk being caught, dog fighters perform crude surgeries without anaesthetic, adding to suffering. Most dogs used for fighting ultimately are killed in the fight, die as a result of their injuries, or are then just killed and discarded.
Thank the Honourable Lady. She's been very generous, and she mentioned Project Bloodline, which I think is an excellent initiative by the League Against Cruel Sports. I certainly see signs in my constituency. You can see the teeth marks on the trees where they hang the dogs from the trees to strengthen their jaws, but it's very much undercover. It's quite difficult to track them down. So will she join me in congratulating the League's initiative under Project Bloodline to offer a £1,000 reward to people in Luton under a pilot, where people can come forward with any information they have about illegal dog fighting in their area?
thank the Honourable Lady. That sounds like an excellent pilot, and I would like to see it expanded right throughout the country if successful. During training, dogs are usually kept penned or chained. They are raised in isolation, and yet we know they are man's best friend. They are starved and taunted to trigger extreme survival instincts and to encourage aggression. They may be forced to tread water in pools, to run on a treadmill, whilst another terrified animal is dangled in front of them as bait, or to hang, as described, with their jaws whilst dangling from a chain or a tree baited with meat. They are slammed against walls to toughen them up. Many may be injected by steroids. Some dog fighters sharpen their dog's teeth, cut off their ears to prevent latching during fights, or even add roach poison to their food so that their fur tastes bad to other dogs. I will indeed.
Thank you, Sir Roger, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for securing this really important debate. What she has just outlined shows a massive scale of premeditation, planning, thought, and I hesitate to use this word, but investment. Does she not therefore agree that the people who put in that effort to cause such suffering to animals must have sentences that properly reflect the activities they've engaged in, not just in fighting dogs, but the planning for it?
And thank the Honourable Lady, and I very much wholeheartedly agree, and I would also add that we know from research on psychology that individuals who engage in animal cruelty show traits of psychopathy and are very much more likely to then engage in cruelty against humans. Dog fighting results in torn flesh, blood loss, disembowelment and death. Many dogs are found dead and dumped in the countryside. Dogs who win are forced to fight again. They are sold on to breed puppies for profit. Female dogs are strapped down on rape stands whilst males impregnate them. There is new evidence of casual dog fighting, with offenders fighting their dogs in public places and then capturing this on mobile telephones. Many of the dogs who do not fight or who lose fights are used as described as bait animals. Undercover reporters from animal welfare charities have met dog breeders who offer pit bull puppies and dogs of the bully cutter breed for protection and fighting. The story of Cupcake, brought to our awareness by the League Against Cruel Sports, highlights the issue of bait animals. Cupcake's life was basically torture. Her teeth were ground down to prevent her from protecting herself, and she was used as bait for other dogs. Kay, who is now looking after Cupcake, has said, "Man up if you have a lust for fighting, go out and fight yourself. To victimise and torture a vulnerable animal to create your status or an image is despicable." Battersea Dogs Home regularly take in dogs bearing the physical or mental scars of dog fighting, traumatised animals with telltale bite marks, filed down teeth, and many who have had their jaws wired shut. They are cast out, although as we have described, many are never found or they are killed and discarded. It's a simple message that we need to establish. People involved in dog fighting are cruel, callous, and they require to be convicted. We ask ourselves, why does dog fighting happen? Who on earth would want to engage in this violent pursuit for pleasure or profit? The RSPCA have identified a typology of dog fighting which helps to categorise those involved. Traditional organised dog fighting, which involves working class males and is organised. This is an underground activity involving large amounts of money, which is gambled on dogs. Pit bull terriers are almost exclusively used for this type of fight. Individuals involved in this don't just happen upon it. They may well be involved in other forms of organised crime. They have a life of violence and torturing and killing animals, which is an adjunct to criminal lives. Cultural typology. This is whereby individuals from different cultures which do not prohibit dog fighting may bring these activities to the UK despite it being banned, and who require education. Change Street. This is described as a new trend for dog fighting, seen in inner cities, where young men in gangs or on the fringes fight dogs to settle scores or to try to assert their standing in their communities. The League Against Cruel Sports has identified different levels of dog fighting. Level 1, impromptu street fights, part of a street culture. Hobbyist, how, I just can't even imagine that a hobby is dog fighting, but the hobbyist characteristic, operating on a localised fighting circuit, and professional sophisticated dog rings with trained dogs from particular bloodlines taking place in a pit with high stakes gambling, which is highly secretive and invitation only. Research by Middlesex University in November 2015 indicated that dogfighting has historically thrived on its ability to convince our society that it does not exist. There is a severe lack of information and data on dogfighting, and further research is therefore required. There are varied measures of recording of these offences, which also limits data analysis. The largest element of known and recorded dogfighting activity relates to the possession or custody of fighting dogs, but data does therefore not distinguish or reflect between possession and involvement in dogfighting. There is also ongoing inconsistency in procedures between agencies when it comes to tackling the issue. Dogfighting may not be even identified if it's easier to address the issue under animal welfare legislation, meaning that there is underreporting and under-recording. There is a lack of recording between dogfighting and other offences, which is really very much needed now that we know that it is recognised as a gateway crime. Inadequacy in reporting, recording and prosecution is extremely important because it impacts negatively on the resources that are then provided for dogfighting enforcement. It also impacts negatively in appropriate convictions, addressing the severity of the sentence. I will indeed.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. She's making an excellent speech and congratulate her for securing this debate. The point she makes about this being a gateway crime is vital. And isn't it the case that in the United States, dogfighting is recognised as a grade A felony, and the FBI actually prioritises tackling it because of the impact it can have in detecting and preventing other offences?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for that intervention, and I can't emphasise enough that point today. It's a gateway crime. It's organised people who are involved in crime, who are involved. They're individuals who are callous towards animals, which then, research indicates, leads them to a propensity to be callous towards humans. This is something that has to be tackled as a very serious issue. Yes, I will.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way, and I think we're all astounded really in 2016 that we hear these points being made, and the underground behaviour which is frankly being allowed and sustained through a combination of, you know, organised work, dog breeding, you know, making money off, you know, pets that should be looked after, and it's abhorrent behaviour. I'd like to pay tribute to the Blue Cross who rehome in West End, in my constituency, and thank the Honourable Lady for the chance to absolutely bring this to the table. I've had constituents who have taken dogs from that area who've had a chance to give them a better life, but we mustn't let them have that former awful life.
Yes, I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for that intervention, and also to pay my tribute to the Blue Cross. And I think that what is extremely important is that we try to rehabilitate as many of these dogs as possible, although given their traumatic early life, often that isn't possible, and they meet a sad end. Dogfighting has been an offence since the 1800s. Current provision can be found in the Animal Welfare Act 2006 and the Animal Health and Welfare Act Scotland 2006. There are penalties of up to 51 weeks imprisonment and a fine in England and Wales, and up to 12 months imprisonment and a fine of up to £20,000 in Scotland. I should also make reference to the Control of Dogs Scotland Act 2010, which is designed to highlight the responsibilities of dog owners by putting in place a regime that will identify out-of-control dogs at an early juncture and provide measures to change the behaviour of the dogs and their owners before they become dangerous. What I would say is that we require also to have specific legislation that looks at this issue, because I think we have to focus across the UK, and everything we can do to look at is what we're doing enough. And we've already had... Thank you, I will.
Thank you, Member, for giving way. She was outlining, I congratulate her on securing the debate. She was outlining the different natures of the penalties that are applicable at the moment for this heinous criminal activity. Would you agree with me that would send out a very strong signal at a time when there are divisions across the United Kingdom, political divisions, if the wider community were to see a unity of purpose and an increase in terms of the penalties in every nation of the United Kingdom for this very heinous and unacceptable criminal activity?
I thank the honourable member for that intervention, and I would like to see collaboration and agreement across the UK on this very issue. And I would also like to highlight Northern Ireland's Assembly, who have recently lengthened sentencing from a maximum of, for a maximum of 2 to 5 years imprisonment and fines from £5,000 to up to £20,000, meaning that it will have the most stringent legislation within the UK relating to animal cruelty offences. I will indeed.
Congratulate the honourable member in securing the debate and being extremely generous with our time, and I apologise I can't stay to the very end. But as well as consistency across the UK, the League Against Cruel Sports has called for consistency in sentencing across Europe. And does she agree that irrespective of the referendum result, this is an example of where governments ought to cooperate to ensure consistency across borders?
Yes, I would agree with the honourable member's intervention, and I would also say that given that it is a gateway to serious organised crime, collaboration right across the EU on this very issue is required. Yes, I will.
Thank you, honourable member, for giving way. Just further to the point on Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland also and my colleagues in the Assembly are trying to get implemented a register of those found guilty of this heinous crime, and that they're forced to sign it. Not that it's a massive deterrent, but it adds on to what the Assembly has already agreed.
I thank the honourable member for that intervention, and it's one of the things that I will be calling for in this debate. So I would congratulate them for taking this forward. Analysis of court reports by Middlesex University suggests that there have been fewer than 40 convictions for dogfighting between 2008 to 2014. So clearly, given that we know one occurs every day, there's something not quite right about our ability to detect and prosecute. Mike Flynn of the SSPCA has indicated to me that the last conviction in Scotland was 3 years ago. So once again, we need to make sure that we are able to tackle this issue appropriately and to take things forward consensually with best practice evidence from the very many organisations who contribute. Project Bloodline assert that it must be accepted dog fighting remains a major criminal issue in the UK, both in itself and as a gateway crime as described. Vital work undertaken in this area must be resourced and collaborative. It is recommended that a task force be set up to ensure that action takes place to tackle dog fighting, a national dog fighting plan. This plan would be penned around 3 key areas: prevention, understanding and prosecution. Community working groups can aid the education of people and communities vulnerable to dog fighting. The public require increased awareness and education of the signs to look for to aid prevention and detection. Awareness must be increased regarding reporting, such as the use of the League's Animal Crime Watch line, which should be further publicised, and I plan to do that too. Details of individuals banned from keeping dogs should be held on a national register by statutory agencies. They should not be allowed to keep animals, and their activities should be monitored. Local environmental auditing of hotspots should be undertaken by a multi-agency task force to identify and remove environmental factors that enable dog fighting. We must ensure that, where possible, dogs used for fighting, whose lives have been utterly miserable and full of pain and suffering, and bait animals like Cupcake survive and are rehabilitated. Dog licensing should be considered, and reports on dog fighting as a gateway crime indicate it must be treated very seriously, and there should be intelligent crossover between agencies and across countries. The League Against Cruel Sports and RSPCA have called for changes to the way in which dog fighting is tackled, including increased penalties, which we have discussed. The RSPCA welcome a statement in 2015 by DEFRA that the government recognises the seriousness of fighting offences and look at legislative opportunities to increase maximum penalties. We need a review of the Dangerous Dog Act, and I would request an inquiry by the government, and I will also be writing to the Scottish Government in that regard. The League Against Cruel Sports recommend that dog fighting be recorded as a specific offence because we need to improve data quality, assess the scale of the problem and the resources that we require. They do not consider the existing offence of animal fighting be changed entirely, but believe that there should be some modification which could be considered. The penalties should be brought in line with other EU countries to achieve consistency, if there's something we can achieve consistency with now across the EU. 2 years in France and 3 years in Germany and the Czech Republic. They recommend 2 years, noting consistency then with Law Commission's reports to other animal offences. As politicians, we need to continue to raise awareness, assert our views collectively that dog fighting is unacceptable in the UK and promote the steps required to address this heinous crime. I will indeed for the last time.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for bringing this forward. It's a very important matter. And there are people in this room who've actually spoken in the House on many, many occasions and taken bills through this House. But it's all right actually increasing the sentences for all of these things, and we all advocate that. But it's another thing actually educating not only the people out there that practice this, but also the people in the area who serve in the courts, administering and actually levying fines or imprisonment to a level that will stop people doing it. Because we all know from research that we've all done, and the League Against Cruel Sports, the RSPCA, and other bodies have actually made, is because these practices predominantly occur in certain circles of areas throughout Britain, time and time and time again. We all know where they are. The police have done much to try and do things, but they are under-resourced, and so are the animal welfare organisations in these areas. What we need to do is to get the government to understand that more investment needs to be made in these areas with the police, with the local authorities, and with animal welfare organisations to eradicate this pernicious thing.
I thank the Honourable Member, and I think, yes, it's not a one-pronged approach that's needed. We need to address the issues that have been raised. We also need to recognise that if these individuals are involved in organised crimes, if they're making large amounts of money from dog fighting, a small fine and a slap on the wrist is not a deterrent. And we need a deterrent in this case. Dog Fighting Awareness Day is the 8th of April, which also happens to be my birthday, and I hadn't been aware of that before researching this debate. So that's a coincidence. It was established by the American Association for Protection of Cruelty to Animals. As I said at the start, it's actually been traumatic for me as an animal lover to research and speak about this issue. I am sure listening to this debate today will sicken dog lovers and most ordinary people across the country. Dog fighting is a cruel, barbaric, abhorrent and violent crime that has no place in our UK. It is one of the most extreme forms of animal cruelty. I'm pleased and heartened with the number of members who have come today, and I would urge that we work together to eradicate it once and for all.